Right. So our first question, and just so y'all understand, like what we're doing with this space, like one more time, like we're bridging street dance, modern, classical, a lot of spaces that we didn't occupy together, but now we're here with a lot of different people. My street dance homies, I see all of y'all, right? But I see a lot of new faces, a lot of people I've never seen before that are sharing this space, right? And that's what this is. That's what sanctuary means, this refuge, and this space is a refuge for movement, for all of us. Amidst all of this pandemic and everything else, we're able to come together. This panel that we put together was some great minds that were able to, that'll be able to elaborate on the little things that, you know, whether it's plaguing our different scenes, different cultures, and, you know, are things that are highlighted. So that's the space that we're creating right now. I'll go ahead and start with the first question. So, while we acknowledge the similarities and oneness of dance and life, there are major divisions between styles, communities, and cultures of dancing. Why do you think that separation exists? I want to take that. Ooh. You got it, man? You want me to shoot it again or good?
I think I got it.
Okay, let's go.
Separation, right? The cultures and...
Why do you think this separation exists between the major divisions between styles, communities, and cultures of dance?
Woo! So there's a lot of factors, right? So first and foremost, this is interesting because I am a performing arts studio manager, and I've been doing that for like since 2012. So everybody always say like streets and studio versus studio or whatnot, but I'm from like kind of both worlds, you know, and it's very, I'm gonna use that word, segregated. And to be honest, I think it's just the big word called ignorance, to be honest with you. A lot of people, when they think of hip hop, I don't know what people think, but when people think of hip hop, I had one mom that was like, she's not dancing urban enough. I'm like, what do you mean? You know what I'm talking about, twerking. They want their little girls to twerk. I'm like, well, that is not technically hip hop, but it's like a huge umbrella term. And I was just talking to a mom, I was just like, you know, hip hop is such a huge umbrella that everybody can like misuse the words between like funk styles, which is popping and locking, and then the original hip hop dance is breaking. Everybody knows it's breakdancing. So it kind of kills me a little bit that a lot of people, when they say hip hop, they just throw the word around like the urban funk, like the urban dance styles. And so when I teach my students, I try to tell them about the culture, about hip hop, and so they can have an understanding where it came from, the elements and everything like that. But it's just so confusing still, right? So as an educator in the hip hop culture, I always try to tell my students what hip hop is. And then when it comes to the other styles of dance, everybody always say, I'm probably gonna make a lot of people mad. People say, technique is the foundation of all dance. No, it's just movement. It's just movement. And every style has its own technique, okay? So this is what I just have a strong passion for dance in general, that when I hear these things, I have no clue what to answer because you hear it all the time. Ballet is the foundation of all dance. And I'm like, well, does ballet, how about this? I mean, ballet, you're not allowed to do that in ballet, right? Contemporary maybe, right? So just like it's so confusing. It's confusing. And then jazz, tap, all came from the streets. So now it's called studio dance. It came from black people, okay? So it just gets really confusing. Most of the dance styles we do today are from black people. Do we teach our kids that? The real culture of that? The true history of dance? It gets really confusing. Sorry, I just got angry. Sorry. But it's so confusing. I'm just saying, that's what it is. ignorant, judgmental. It's all of that. And I have no clue what the answer is to bridge that information, because everybody's going around saying ballet is the foundation of this, hip hop is this. It gets tiring, and I don't know what to do as an educator in a dance studio.
Do what you
Sorry.
doing,
Oh my God, that was long.
You do what you're doing, sis. Each one teach one. She touched on a lot of really interesting points. Why is there a disparity within dance styles and dance culture? Why is there a disparity within culture in general? You know, and she mentioned when people think hip hop, what do they generally think? They think black. And black is something that ears the general population. So naturally, it has to be a certain version of blackness that people want to deal with, yeah? So when you look at the reality of what you spoke of, hip hop, which is our culture, we lived it, yeah? Versus the younger generation who didn't grow up with hip hop as not a part of popular culture, which I like to call the hip hop generation. So those are the mamas that want their kids to twerk because they think that twerking is hip hop. But all we can do is stay steadfast in our understanding of what the truth and reality of the culture is. Hip hop is more than the dance. The way we dress is a representation and a reflection of the culture that pioneered hip hop. Even though hip hop is associated as a largely black or urban American culture, it is the epitome of America. It's an amalgamation of all the cultures that existed before. Where do breakbeats come from? All the music that came before. Hip hop is an amalgamation. Hip hop is each and every one of us, but we don't really acknowledge it as such. It is purely and unadulteratedly American. But unfortunately, we live in a world that creates separation. Because separation allows for people to rule or to, in hip hop's case, to market. If you grew up in hip hop culture in the 80s, then you know that hip hop was not a part of popular culture. In the 90s, it became a part of popular culture, but it became commodified. It became something that was a product. And now what is sold and marketed to the world as hip hop is not the culture. It's hip hop. It is a product that is a residual affectation or an element of the whole entire culture, but does not represent the whole entire culture of hip hop. So again, there are separations, but the separations stem beyond the dance style. This deals with humanity and our selfishness in power and gain. So how do we change these things? Each one teach one. Recognize the truth within yourself and live it. And in hip hop, as they said back in the day, because there ain't no future in front.
Hello, y'all. Okay, good. Okay. So let me just give y'all, from my point of view, just what I experienced as far as separation, you know what I'm saying, in the dance and the styles. I'm not gonna get into culture because we could be here all day. You know what I'm saying? We ain't trying to do that. But I went to Columbia College Chicago and I entered. Can y'all hear me? Okay. That motorcycle was kind of, tripping me up a little bit. But I entered as a freshman as a dance major. And the program is predominantly modern dance. To give you a little background, I studied modern dance in high school as well, but it was mostly Horton technique. If you have any, knowledge about modern dance, Alvin Ailey does a lot of Horton technique, so I can relate to that because as a black woman, Alvin Ailey was kind of like, I was really looking up to him as just like somebody I could, like a blueprint basically as for a black modern dancer. And when I went to Columbia College, and I'm like, well, this is different because they got ground, they got different modern dancers, but none of it came from a lens of, black people or black culture. And we exist in those spaces. So that was kind of interesting to me. And to be honest, after a while, I changed my major In the same semester of training modern at Columbia College, I also started to participate in street dance in Chicago. So I started to learn how to break. You know, I started learning my first 6-step and started kind of becoming obsessed about hip hop just because of the simple fact that I found myself having to defend it all the time at that predominantly white college. Literally, I had to take a dance studies course, and we would do different dance styles and dance genres every week. We would have to cover a style. When we finally got to hip hop, instead of doing it for a week, we did it for a day. And also I had a teacher, she was a modern dancer, but she didn't know anything about hip hop, and she was trying to teach us about hip hop. And I had to defend it. And I was only really in the culture for about, 6 to 5 months at that time. So I found myself defending it because as a black person, it's really lineage, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I just felt like you can't just talk about it any kind of way and I not defend it. Not only from the teacher, but from the students who believed that they were hip hop because they took hip hop classes. But all at the same time, hip hop was only covered for a day. Hip hop courses were not mandatory to get a dance degree in dance. But after graduation, I found out most of my peers at that school are now teaching hip hop in studios. Do you understand what I'm saying? I don't think I have anything else to say here. I could go on, but I don't think I have anything else to say.
Well, I think one of the main things that I think about is a misrepresentation of people in a culture. I think the separation is related to a lot of the conversations that we're having today and that we should have been having for a long time in this country around the misrepresentation of the different cultures and the way that we provide or don't provide access for individuals in urban areas and different societies that we come from. I think it's about access. I think that when I started learning hip hop, I felt that as the son of immigrants, I was really confused about like growing up in New York, but my parents speaking a different language or being from somewhere else. Was I from there? Was I from New York? Was I American? Because in America, they want to say that I'm something, but then for me, I'm just a New Yorker. And so I felt like my culture, I looked at hip hop as maybe a kind of cultural inheritance. So I did not come to the dance to go to a studio or to like work up a sweat or to learn some kind of technique. I felt like I was coming into my own. I felt that it was a music that could provide information for me, a kind of vibe, a recovery, a healing. It was a movement that I could use to be part of a tribe. It was a folk dance that I could learn that was coming from the people that came from where I came from. And along with that, I think the histories and the length of that history is also significant in the separation. When we talk about hip hop, we're talking about a 50 to 60 year history. And not only that, but it's a mangled history. It's a history from people who aren't educated in the ways that we find to be significant in this country. It's not college educated professors, it's not PhDs, not yet. It's not people who are putting that knowledge in books. Whereas if you think about ballet, if you think about contemporary dance, modern dance, this is a lineage that stems back 400 to 500 years. It started off as a court dance. What is a court dance? It's a social dance. What is hip hop? It's a social dance. Ballet started as a social dance, and it's evolved into something else. It's evolved into something that is recognizable on TV. So when people think of dance, they think of what they see on TV. They see the representation that they see on TV. And so when they think of hip hop, what is the representation of hip hop on television? But also, who controls that representation? Who is making the most money from the, I don't want to say exploitation, but who is putting those images up in front of you to see? And who is receiving those images and who decides what hip hop is? Hip hop started as a culture. It started as a community getting together to party and to celebrate. I believe that that's probably what ballet started as well, as a way for people to come together to dance, to rejoice, to find joy. Dance at its root is about giving praises to the gods. I think at the end of the day, we're still trying to do that. But I think it's about connecting to what culture are you connecting to? What God are you connecting to? What spirit are you connecting to? hip hop is still very much rooted in that, and other dance forms, once they become materialized, or capitalism robs them of that. And I think that that separation is also significant to bring into account.
Yes, yes.